because this is public business. Somebody who take about their time taking out pictures from afar and sending text messages to city council members. I mean, this guy can easily cross that line to start vandalizing our businesses. I just, Mr. Victor told me to come and get on record here, so that's what I did. That's all my comment I have to say. But, thank you.
Lieutenant Christopher Ray. Lieutenant Ray, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I wanted to say thank you guys for what you've done for the city. I know that a lot of you have been working in the public sector for a while now, and it doesn't go unnoticed, so thank you. I just wanted to speak briefly on a couple of things that concern me. I don't speak for the City of Socorro or for the Socorro Police Department officially, but I am here as an employee that's been here several years, and so what I wanted to speak about was the concern that I have with regards to officer retention. We have major issues there where we need to focus on, and unfortunately, this is an inherited problem. City manager didn't create this issue, neither did the chief of police. This has been a problem since the inception of the police department, and we've been neglected in that area since its inception. And so what we have is a high level of a loss to other agencies. We have officers who get recruited purposely for this agency to go to their agencies.
We were disconnected from the
Welcome and thank. If you are the host, please enter your PIN phone. Thank you. There are 4 participants in the conference. Please announce yourself.
And so what I wanted to speak was with regards to that issue is regarding our retention. A lot of our officers leave, they're recruited by other agencies. We can't keep them. And when you have that type of issues, you have problems with officers that are not as knowledgeable as a senior officer is. If you go to El Paso, you go to the sheriff's office, any of these surrounding agencies, they have a police force where they have 20-year veterans, 25-year veterans. Unfortunately, our current average right now, you have veterans out there who are 2 years. We have 2.6 years out there, and that creates an issue with not being able to solve crimes fast enough because they don't know the offenders out there. You don't have officers who know the area as good as a senior officer would. And so these are the things that we're having. It's frustrating for an administrator as myself, having to continue to motivate them. And the problem is we don't have a pension. You have all these other agencies that have pensions. I ask you guys, if you have law enforcement friends or family, ask them that are not from Socorro and ask them, would they work at a police department that doesn't have a pension? I guarantee you overwhelmingly, they're gonna say no. This is why we come to the public sector. And so this is why we're losing officers. Not only that, we're dealing with a city who's specifically trying to recruit our police chief. Our police chief came in, he's doing things that no other chief has done because, again, a lot of these chiefs that come in are just here for a retirement job. This chief, we were fortunate to get a chief that's here to work. And so, again, I take that into consideration because if we have another chief that comes in, we're not going to get the job that we're looking for as police officers and employees. We have families as well. We understand that it's got to be a give or take, but we ask you to look into it. And do what you guys can to help us out in that area because it is frustrating when we're out there and we're having to keep track of all these officers that are leaving. We're paying them to train them, and then they're leaving somewhere else with that knowledge that we could have kept here in Socorro. So I ask that you guys help us and try to take that. I know you guys are inheriting this as well as the city manager did, and we are making strides. I know the city manager and the chief are doing things to try to keep us here, but unfortunately, it's not working. It's not being something. We can always get something better. So I ask you that you take that into consideration and thank you for your time.
Your time is up. Sergeant Hassan.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager, everybody. I want to start off also by saying that I've also been here going on 12 years and currently as a current training sergeant. I also want to point out the money part of it. As a training sergeant, it's really frustrating for me to put my time, effort, experience that I have gained here in the police department to train all these officers and see them go a year later because they find another opportunity. If you all look at the numbers and you really want to punch the numbers, we are investing and we are training officers. We're paying tax city dollars to train them and go somewhere else. So I want to go ahead and convey that to you, that also that's what we're losing here. We're losing the experience. Like Lieutenant Ray said, our average retention rate is about 2.5 per year. They don't stay longer than that. And I wouldn't blame them either if they're going to get a pension, a better life somewhere else. At the end of the day, we are risking our lives, and you know, there's always that possibility we might not come home. But as a current training sergeant, I also want to express my frustration when it comes to me training officers and collecting, investing approximately $2,500 to $3,000 in training equipment, hiring, training hours. We're talking about background investigators doing overtime to you know, look into all these people, and a year and a half later, 2 years later down the line, these officers get the experience, they train here, and they leave somewhere else for a better opportunity. Texas DPS recruits from us, the El Paso Police Department recruits from us. And I want to convey that we are training professional officers that other people are looking at. So take into consideration the pension. Keep us here. Half of my career in the police career has been here, and I want to finish it here. So please help us. Thank you.
Mayor, the floor is speaker. Thank you. Moving on to presentations.
Mayor, can I speak?
Is that Ms.
Mayor,
Meadows?
can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can I ask the officers 2 questions?
Mayor, we can't have a discussion that's not posted, so it's only public comment.
A statement?
No, not unless it's posted item. So,
That's fine.
the public comment, you can't, make a statement based upon.
I'm sorry, I can't hear, so you didn't even have to put me in.
No, it would have to be posted.
If there's an agenda item on the topic, then there can be discussion when we get to that agenda item, but we can't have a comment based upon the public comment. It's only for the
It's-
public to voice.
It's not a comment, it's 2 questions.
What,
Discussion. It's discussion, we can't have that.
Okay.
Unless it's
Sorry,
posted.
I told you. Thank you.
Moving on to presentations, item number 5, memorial for the passing of City Commissioner George G. Dominguez.
Mr. Dominguez served proudly as a commissioner on the Board of Adjustments since May of 2020. Mr. Dominguez was also a volunteer with SISD at Escondrias. He strived to make this community a better place. As a memorial tradition, City of Socorro would like to extend our condolences, thoughts, and affirmations with all of the Dominguez family in this difficult time. Thank you.
Moving on to consent agenda.
Motion consent agenda.
Second.
Ruben Reyes,
Yes.
Cesar Nevares,
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia,
Aye.
Rudy Cruz Jr.,
Yes.
and Iván Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Moving on to our regular agenda, public hearing and ordinances. Item number 9, public hearing of an ordinance for the proposed rezoning of tracts 4C1 and 4C1L, Block 3, Socorro Grande, Socorro, Texas. R1, single-family residential to C2, general commercial, and tracts 2A and 3B1, so Block 3, Socorro Grande, Socorro, Texas, from C2, general commercial, to R2, medium-density residential, and tract 9A2, Block 3, Socorro Grande, Socorro, Texas, from A1 agricultural to R2 medium-density residential. It is now 6:20 p.m. Public hearing is open.
Mayor, we do have a speaker, Mayor Cruz. Go ahead, Ms. Cruz.
Thank you. So as you all know, as you all know, I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and so I'm not here representing the commission, but I will say that, we just went over our bylaws, and in our bylaws, we actually have a section where it discusses that during public hearing, we actually hear a presentation first before, people from the public are asked to, comment, especially because usually there are many individuals who want to hear first a presentation before they share their comments. Many community members, and planning and zoning meetings, as well as in city council meetings, usually state that when they ask to speak, they say, well, I just want to know what's going on. I want to know what they're going to do. We just got a letter and so we came or we called. And so that's my first comment. During this comment, I've said that for many years. I've been saying that that's the way to go, that the presentation should be given before public comment is open. And I'm going to keep saying that because I think it makes sense. And I think it's more efficient. The second comment is that I did see in the backup the comments that were given by the public. I was reviewing the public, the backup for the two items, and there is no details of the public or community members that did show up to our meetings to show concern in regards to in regards to these this plant or these plants. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
No other speakers, ma'am.
Is there any other speakers? Public hearing is now closed at 6:22 p.m. Item number 10, second reading and adoption of an ordinance for the proposed rezoning of tracts 4C1 and 4C1L, Block 3, Socorro Grande, Socorro, Texas, R1 single-family residential to C2 general commercial, and tracts 2A and 3B1, Block 3, Socorro Grande, Socorro, Texas, from C2 general commercial to R2 medium density residential, and tract 9A2, Block 3, Socorro Grande, Socorro, Texas, from A1 agricultural to R2 medium density residential.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Carlos Gainán with Planning and Zoning. Wanted to present to you this item that was postponed a couple of weeks ago. So this is a rezoning. There are a few different moving pieces, right? There's 4 different parcels of land with different zoning districts. So I'm going to walk you through the different aspects of each property. But essentially, as part of background, can I get the presentation of this? Next slide, please. Very good. So as part of background, as the mayor mentioned in her introduction of the item, there are different zoning classifications. Most of these are, a large parcel is already zoned C2, it's already zoned R1. And so currently, if the developer wanted to, he or she could develop the land based on the entitlements that are given to the land based on the zoning district. So I wanted to make sure that that was part of the conversation. So again, properties are currently vacant, located around Horizon Boulevard or on Horizon Boulevard. Parcels are approximately 30 acres in size. And then when you look at the Socorro future land use map, it has different designations, some agricultural, some commercial, and some rural residential. And then I'll walk you through the last point in just a second, but the way that the developer has laid out the development, it creates a really great mixed-use development where you're combining different uses within the same neighborhood. Again, I'll walk you through that item a bit. The Planning and Zoning staff is recommending approval, and the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval. It's up there on a 3-2. There were 2 absent members on October 5th, 2021. Next slide, please. So again, just as the location of the parcels are abutting Horizon, there is a street that will be going down the middle of the parcels, but for the most part, it's located on Horizon Boulevard and abutting the Mesa Drain lateral. Next slide. So as I mentioned, here's the current zoning. The red dictates the commercial use, which is currently C2, which is the largest commercial district that the City of Socorro has. I want to point out that when the case went to the P&Z, at the time the applicant had requested that both sides of the Mesa lateral be considered. Both sites were considered. Subsequent to October 5th, and having conversations with the developer, they have withdrawn the right side of the lateral. They want to wait for phase 2 until it's platted. So for tonight, and as part of the description that's in the item, we're not considering that second large part of the development. So it's only next slide. So it's only this side, right? So when you look at the site that you are considering, again, you have a small parcel that is being requested to go from residential 1 to C2, and the larger commercial from C2 to R2, and then the agricultural piece is being requested to go from A1 agricultural 1 to medium residential R2. I'll just make a note on the R1, which is the single family homes, right? When you are looking at land uses and zoning districts, typically you don't want to have single family homes right abutting or fronting a large major thoroughfare like Horizon Boulevard, right? You sort of major thoroughfares are left for apartments, commercial, manufacturing, many of the uses that you see along Horizon Boulevard. So when you look at the transition from R1 to C2, again, it makes sense to have a commercial land use as opposed to a single family land use, especially right along Horizon Boulevard. Next slide, please. Here are just some of the images of the property. Here, next slide. So again, here's the aerial where the outline in red looks at the different parcels. And again, I think I've outlined the different parcels with their current zoning districts. Next slide. And then just for you all to look at a larger aerial view, so it's closer to I-10 than it is to North Loop in terms of Horizon Boulevard's location. The next slide. We did send out public notices as required by law within the 200 feet of the subject property, and at the time that it went to the P&Z, we did send out notices, including that second parcel. As was noted by the speaker on the line, against this rezoning. The comments were based on, wanting to keep the land vacant, some degrees of concerns with traffic, and then again, just general opposition to the development of land in the future as it's being proposed. And then the next slides. So again, here is and I'm going to walk you through the slide's a little weird, but can I see the next slide? Yeah, so it's skewed a little bit, but essentially what we're seeing is that parcel that I showed you as R1 will be commercial. You do have a site for apartments which are allowed in the R2 zoning district, and then you do have 107 single-family lots. You have one public park. You have one apartment site, as I mentioned, again, which would be allowed in the R2. You have the public pond, and then, as I mentioned, the commercial lot. So again, when you look at developments, right, of neighborhoods and subdivisions, you sort of want to have the combined land uses all in one. Best practices sort of says that you want some commercial so that people could walk to the commercial areas, so you don't have people driving all the time. You want a mix of incomes, and that is achieved through the mix of apartments and single-family homes. And then you want to make sure that you have some parkland dedication, as is the case here. So again, when you think of as the totality of a neighborhood, it encompasses all sort of different things that people need to live in a community, right? Apartments, single-family, parks, ponding, and retail. And so that is sort of why we based the recommendation to the city council. Again, you have development there now that could be that is applicable based on the entitlements. We believe that the switching from the C2s to the R2s and the R1s makes sense, again, for the reasons that I stated. There's one more slide that just shows the different zoning districts. Next slide, please. And with that, Mayor and Council, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I believe that the applicant is here as well.
May we have a motion, please?
I have a question. Motion to open for discussion.
Second.
Mr. Cruz?
Mr. Gaina,
Yes, sir.
we don't have the slides that you just showed us right now on our backup agenda, correct?
You have most of them.
Most of it, the one that you just showed us right now, because I can't see them too well from where I'm sitting, but my question is,
Yes, sir.
when developers come in and they meet with the city, do we look at the master plan before we engage in contractual agreements with the developer? And the reason why I ask is because how many parks are going to be built like in this area right here?
So the first question, Mr. Cruz, it's not a contractual agreement, right? It's not a contract. What the developer is asking is what you call an entitlement. And so that includes zoning, that includes subdivision plats, right? So it's not necessarily a contract per se, but when the developer comes in, they submit the application. Sometimes we have a preliminary or pre-development meeting, sometimes we don't, just depends on the size and scope of the development. But yes, you look, so there's a couple of things that you look at. You look at surrounding land uses, right? So again, if there's other commercial districts in the surrounding area, and they're wanting to switch to commercial, then again, that's where the transition is going. So we look at surrounding land uses, surrounding zoning districts. We look at, to some degree, what the future land use map says, because that is adopted as part of the comprehensive plan for the City of Socorro. And then we look at what they're proposing. So again, based on the development, the plot plan that they submitted from a planning perspective, that's what we base our recommendations on.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that our development fits the city and the city doesn't fit the plan. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
That's right.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
And just real quick, I mean, right, the developer is asking for a privilege, right? The city doesn't have to give them the
We
rezoning.
granted.
But again, you base it on all these other things, and from our perspective, it's already zoned for development, and in this case, it could be zoned for high-density commercial, right? A Walmart per se, a Home Depot, sort of large retail areas, right?
Ms. Villalobos?
Hello?
Did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Molina. So right now what we're doing is just approving the change of the zoning, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then later on, they're gonna come in with the plot maps that they decide to develop it. And they'll let us know how many houses, what size they're proposing, and how many parks, and whatever else they want to propose.
Ms. Villalobos, Colombia Villalobos, that's exactly right. So we're approving the rezoning. They would still have, the second phase of this would still have to be the subdivision plat.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am?
Mr. Reyes?
I got a comment, and this is for developers. Mr. Escobar, CA Group. I know that Mr. Gallinar's working on an ordinance to better the city as far as parks and landscape. You guys are building left and right in the city. I think we're on the same page. We ask you to look at the plans that you have for the parks and, go at it. Don't give us just the minimum like a lot of other developments, because we're gonna live here, we stay here, people buy their houses and 30, 40 years living here in Socorro. And I think we deserve a little bit more than what we've been seeing as far as landscape and parks. That's my comment.
Mayor,
Sure.
good evening, Mayor and Council.
Will you please speak up?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We'd be more than happy to work with the Director of Parks to establish a standard that the city would be happy with. We're not here for a one-time deal. We plan to develop for many years in Socorro, so we want to be a good partner. So I know you have a Parks Director, so if you want us to work with him and you want to send your ideas through him to us, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May anyone else speak before this item? Miriam Cruz?
Yes, hello?
Go ahead, Ms. Cruz.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. I have to say. I want to ask Mr. Ignat, the people that spoke at the Planning and Building Commission meeting actually also talked about concerns in regards to their farm life, their farm animals, that abut is, they also talked about water concerns, in regards to actually access to water that they have access to right now. I would like to bring up the fact that if you think about where this is actually located specifically, I'm imagining another COVID issue down the road, because the flooding is going to be an issue right along this area where the land dips down drastically. I will also want to mention that traffic is going to be a nightmare. It already is on the horizon. Issue that the backup that is presented to the meeting is not in the backup, as Mr. Cruz mentioned. That's very frustrating because we only have a few seconds to see it on screen and it's usually not very clear. And so I want to request again that if something's going to be presented to the public at the meeting, that is given in the backup previously posted online. And then lastly, Mr. Reyes, I just want to say we can ask and request and beg all we want, but they don't have to do anything just because we ask. They already failed to put a park in the silos along the soccer. They already failed to put a park that they were going to do out of the east part of Socorro. And I'm talking about Mr. Estrada and that planning specifically. And so, we change the zoning, even though the zoning is different on the master plan, and that's I think something that y'all should consider. I'm sorry, my time is up?
Your time is up.
Well, I think you guys should be asking a lot more questions, that's all. Thank you.
Ruben Enriquez?
Yes.
Cesar Nevares?
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia?
Aye.
Rudy Cruz?
Yes.
And Ivan Colombia Villalobos.
And I just want to add real quick, yes, we should be asking more questions, but right now, I think we got out of the topic. Right now, it's just rezoning. That's all it is. We can talk about these things when it's time to talk about them, and they're on the agenda. And, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Item number 11, public hearing of an ordinance for the proposed rezoning of Lot 2, Block 1 by Sereno, Tract 25A, Block 15, Socorro Grant, Tracts 24B1, 25B3, Block 15, Socorro Grant, Tract 25A1, Block 15, Socorro Grant, Socorro, Texas, from R1, single-family residential, to R2, medium-density residential. It is now 6:39 p.m.
Mayor, Councilor, if I may, we respectfully request that you delete both items 11 and 12 so the request from the applicant also requires, or they had asked for a variance in the setbacks, and I unfortunately neglected to put that as part of the description in the ordinance, and so when the item was posted, it does not include the variance which needs to be included. So we're asking that we delete items 11 and 12, and then if you notice, item 8 is the introduction of this item with the correct language that will be heard 2 weeks from today.
Motion to delete
Thank you.
items 8 and 12. Second.
Ruben Reyes.
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz.
Yes?
And Iván Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Item number 13, public hearing of an ordinance repealing ordinance number 310, designating transportation reinvestment zone number 1 for the city of Socorro, Texas, declaring ordinance number 310 void and confirming the validity of ordinance number 324, designating transportation reinvestment zone number 2 for the city of Socorro, Texas. Public hearing. It is now 6:40 p.m. Public hearing is open.
Mayor, we do have a speaker. Miriam Cruz.
Thank you, Ms. Navarro, and I just want to point out that I also signed up to speak on the two items that was deleted, and I wish I would have been allowed to speak on those. But I'll move on, even though they were deleted. On item number, what are we on? 13, 14. So this was made very much more clear, and I think Alejandra Valadez, and I'm probably going to commend her for this, because it's very clear in the backup what's being asked, why it's being done. But the only thing I think that wasn't clear from this is the tiers, the transportation reinvestment fund. So I know that's been discussed before previously, but I guess I just wish that maybe a little bit of a summary blurb that she's probably just about to give right now would have also just been included. So I mean, it's very clear what is trying to be asked of the citizens tonight to do. And so I do appreciate that the backup is very clear. And as always, I commend Ms. Valadez for her hard work and efficient work. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
No, Mayor, just Ms. Cruz. Mayor, and my apologies, Commissioner Ileana Olin is present at our meeting.
Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year.
Good evening, Ms. Commissioner. As there are no other speakers, public hearing is now closed at 6:42 p.m. Item number 14, second reading and adoption of an ordinance repealing ordinance number 310, designating transportation reinvestment zone number 1 for the city of Socorro, Texas, declaring ordinance number 310 void, and confirming the validity of ordinance number 324, designating transportation reinvestment zone number 2 for the city of Socorro, Texas.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Alejandra Valadez, City Development Director. We're here requesting your approval of this ordinance, repealing the previous ordinance 310 and affirming the validity of CRC number 2. And I'll briefly explain what this ordinance is about. Ordinance 310 was adopted by City Council action on December 6, 2012. This ordinance established Transportation Reinvestment Zone number 1 within the City of Socorro. This is the existing TRZ that runs along Level Tanks Road currently. It was subsequently determined that there were concerns with the validity of that TRZ, number 1. As a response to such questions of validity, City Council then approved Ordinance 324 on December 12, 2013, establishing Transportation Reinvestment Zone number 2 to serve as a replacement to TRZ number 1, also along Nuevo Tanks Road. Now we are requesting your approval of this ordinance to affirm the validity of Ordinance 324, to void Ordinance 310, which relates to TRZ number 1, and to affirm that TRZ number 2 is valid and current, and it has been adopted according to state regulations for the adoption of these TRZs. The reason why we're coming to you with this ordinance is because, as you recall, during our last council meeting, we entered into an agreement with the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority for the development of new transportation projects in TRZ number 2. Their legal team has asked us to come to you before council and assure that TRZ number 2 is valid, and this ordinance will do just that.
May we have a speaker for this item? Mary Cruz?
Hello?
Ms. Cruz, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So I love this one, that is perfectly listed, perfectly explained, and so I don't really have any comments. Thank you.
No more questions? Ruben Reyes?
Yes.
Cesar Nevares?
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia is absent. Rudy Cruz?
Yes.
And Iván Pablo Villalobos.
Yes.
Moving on to Police Department, item number 15, discussion and action regarding updated quotes for the previously approved body-worn cameras and in-car video cameras with wireless transfer capability added.
Motion to approve. Second.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, Dave Burke, Chief of Police. So 2 meetings ago, I brought the subject of body cameras up for council review. We are in the process of upgrading that capability. We still intend to go with our original vendor, which was custom, but as we tried to finalize our purchase order, the price went up $5,300. And that was because there was a wireless feature that was added that wasn't included in the original quote. So we had to go around and then ask the other vendors that we originally contacted, which was Wolfcom included in that, and well, the other 4 that you had, the other 3 that you had, to find out if that was an additional cost for them. In one case it was not, in the other 2 it was, so custom still remains our best option. But to be transparent, I just wanted to bring it forward to council and let you know there was a $5,300 increase.
Ruben Reyes?
Yes.
Cesar Nevares?
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia?
Aye.
Rudy Cruz?
Yes.
And Iván Pablo Villalobos.
Yes.
Moving on to Planning and Zoning Department, item number 16, discussion and action to approve resolution 664 for final plat for Socorro Logistics Center Unit 1, being all of tracks 7 and 13, and a portion of tracks 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12A, Block 5, Socorro Grant, Socorro, Texas.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Once again, Carlos Gagnon with the Planning and Zoning. So this is this is final plat for Socorro Logistics Center Unit 1. For many of council, this is going to look familiar as you have seen this item many times over the past several months. So the last time that you saw this, you all approved the master plan and you approved the preliminary plat. So this is the final plat, which is sort of the final process in the development phase that the developing events begin the construction of the lot. So I'll walk you through the case again. Background information, it is, the zoning is industrial commercial mixed-use development. It is part of the Socorro Logistics Master Plan. Again, as I mentioned, it is phase 1 of 3, and I will walk you through those different phases in just a second. This phase of the development is 101.2 acres. Parcel is vacant, and the future land use map calls for commercial along this part of Socorro. The applicant is subdividing 3 parcels and includes 2 private ponds and several streets. Master plan again was approved by the P&Z and City Council. Preliminary plat was approved by P&Z and City Council as well. Planning and zoning staff is recommending approval with some conditions, and I'll walk you through those in just a second. And the P&Z Commission voted to approve 5-0 first meeting of the year in 2022. Here's the location map. I think you all are familiar with the location. Again, North Loop and Nuevo Waco tanks. Here's the zoning map. So the area in yellow outlines the entirety of the Socorro Logistics Center. And then here's some property images. Next slide, please. Aerial is the next slide. Next slide, just a different view of the aerial. And then, as you all know, the last time that we brought this to you, the development is a large development. It includes 3 different phases. So this is phase 1, which is that area outlined in gray. And so the plat that you'll see will mirror the outline of the streets and the different parcels. Phase 2 will come in later, and then the final phase is phase 3. In totality, there's about 300 acres in the whole development. And then here's the next slide, just a copy of the, just a view of the plat. This one shows one large parcel and a street. The next slide shows a different parcel with the street as well, running east to west. And then on the recommendations, and this is, we have discussed this with the developer, and our legal team is reviewing these. But the recommendation is that when you vote, please add the following 2 conditions. And one, that an easement agreement is executed prior to recording of the plat. The easement agreement has been agreed upon by our attorneys and their attorneys. It just needs to be recorded. Recommendation number 2 is that a performance bond is executed prior to recording of the plat. That documentation is currently being reviewed by our attorneys. And essentially what that does is that it guarantees the developer will put upfront money for the cost of the streets, the public infrastructure, so that they're able to develop. If anything goes wrong in the development, there's money guaranteed as a performance bond for the city of Socorro to come in and finish the project. Customary, nothing out of the ordinary when it comes to development, but want to make sure that we have those 2 agreements in place before the plan is finalized. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On your summary request, not necessarily yours, but it calls for 1 lift station. Can you give me some background on that? Am I looking at the correct one?
I think it's a different one, Mr. Cruz.
Am I? Okay.
Yes, sir, it's a different one. It's the next one.
Okay, we'll get to that one right now.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reyes, would you like to amend your motion to include the recommendations?
Who was Mr. Garcia's motion?
Mr. Garcia.
Motion to approve with recommendations. Second.
Ruben Reyes. I'm
Yes.
sorry, we have a speaker for this item. Miriam Cruz.
Thank you, Ms. Navarro. I was waving my hand, but I'm sure you can't see me. I just wanted to say at this one that, I know that this this is something that, obviously is moving forward, it seems like. I am gonna miss the days where Mr. Perez always, brought a motion to open for discussion instead of just approving. I am glad that Mr. Reyna pointed out to me specifically that you guys include, the conditions that they're requesting, and that Ms. Navarro asked, for the amendment. And sometimes, y'all should be aware that I have seen where those are sometimes maybe skipped over and not necessarily spoken on at the moment of voting or prior to voting and part of the motion. And so I think we should keep, close attention to that. In regards to the final plat, I'm just gonna, as constituents, invoke red alarms that are going in my city where, there's growth along Horizon, there's growth along North Loop, now there's gonna be growth on Little Heights where, it's gonna be, if there's already congestion, it's gonna be creating a lot more when construction starts happening. And, there's already construction along that road, obviously, and so it's just something that I wish, council would keep, in mind and would come up with a thoughtful and out-of-the-box solution.
Yes,
to
Ms. Gutierrez.
the pain we have to go through. Thank you.
Adam Dorr? Mr. Drew?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Go ahead.
No comment, unless the council would like to ask the applicant and the developer to attend.
I'm sorry, I can't understand the question.
So he's a developer, he's from Socorro Logistics, so he's here in case you don't have any questions, he's here to answer any questions.
And I think Mr. Escobar would like to also speak on this item.
May I start?
Yes, sir.
Good evening again. I know everybody's focusing on development, but I want to remind you that this is the start of several thousand new jobs coming to Socorro. High-paying jobs, better quality jobs, and this is the catalyzer for new businesses coming into Socorro. So you'll have thousands of collateral jobs coming because that you have an open mind and you're inviting business into the town. So you have to understand that I think this is probably gonna be the biggest employers to come to Socorro in a long time. So there's gonna be tax money, incentive money, jobs, restaurants, businesses. All kinds of things are coming because you have the vision to approve something like this. And this comes because of engineers, architects, developers, business people that are looking to support. So you should be proud of yourself that you're bringing jobs to the people that live in support. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ruben Reyes absent, Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz.
Yes.
And Iván Pablo Villalobos.
Yes.
Item number 17, discussion and action to approve resolution 665, approving a preliminary plat and variance request being a portion of tracks 1B, 1B1, 1C, 1C1, 1D, 1D3, 1H, 2A, 2C1, 4A, 2B, 4B1, 4B2, 4C, 6A, 6B, and 6C, Block 5, Socorro Grande, Socorro, Texas.
Mayor, Council, once again, Carlos Gaina, last item released for planning and zoning for the evening, but this is an important one. It's a preliminary plat for Valle Nuevo Unit 1. Also, a lot of different moving pieces, so I'm going to walk you through each of them. But again, as way of background, so the property is currently vacant. Land is currently 56 acres or so. Zoning district is R2, so very important to delineate that they're not asking for a rezoning. They are asking for a variance, and I'll walk you through that in just a second. But the plat as laid out includes 4 commercial lots, 1 lift station, to Mr. Cruz's point, 2 parks, 3 ponds, and 219, it says 230, I apologize, but it should be 200, it's 219 residential lots. And then the plat also includes some portion of the dedication for the future extension of Nuevo Hueco Tanks Road, which is approximately 5 acres or so. Next slide. The variance request from the applicant is that the applicant is requesting that lots be allowed to be smaller than 6,000 square feet. So currently, as you all know, every zoning district has different dimensional standards. The R2, the minimum size for the R2 is 6,000 square feet. And so the applicant, as it's laid out in the plat, has several lots that are between 5,500 and 6,000. And so the variance would allow the applicant to modify the lot dimensions to lots that are smaller than 6,000 square feet. And again, the R2 district, the minimum is 6,000 square feet. Staff is recommending approval. The preliminary plat complies with all the code provisions of the municipal code. And then the P&Z voted to approve by 3-2 on October 5th, 2021. Next slide, here's the location. So just to give you an idea, the sort of the part that's to the right of Butts North Loop. The closest intersection is Inglewood and North Loop, and not far from the case that you just heard previously on North Loop and Nuevo Hueco Tanks. And the extension of Nuevo Hueco Tanks, the future extension of Nuevo Hueco Tanks extends through part of this property. The zoning map, next slide please, again shows it as R2, which allows single family homes, and again, the different dimensional standards at 6,000 square feet. Next slide shows the area. And so you see North Loop running north to south towards the top of the screen. And you see the Ysleta lateral, yes, that's next slide, that's great. And then I'll walk you through the preliminary plat. So here's, next slide. That's what the plat looks like. Next slide shows, next slide. So here's the plat. I know that you can't see it based on the slide, but again, it lays out the 2 different parks, the ponds, the 219 homes. You see the extension of Nuevo Hueco Tanks, and I'll walk you through that in greater detail. Next slide. So the bigger rectangle in blue shows Nuevo Hueco Tanks, a portion of which the developer will have to develop as part of their proportionate share, right? It's part of their development, so they're going to have to build about half of it. When the city comes in with the extension, they'll build the other half. And then the smaller the smaller square to the bottom right shows what the developer is dedicating to the city. It would be unimproved land. It would be just the raw land that would be dedicated to the city as part of the plat. But again, it would align with the alignment that the city is currently looking at for Nuevo Hueco Tanks. Next slide. And then just a closer view of that. So here's the you see FM 76 North Loop to the right. This shows the land as currently existing conditions. Next slide. Here's the alignment of Nuevo Hueco Tanks. Next slide shows the development, again, as part of what that alignment would look like. And then the next slide shows what the cross section of Nuevo Hueco Tanks would look like. So again, there will be connectivity to the development through Nuevo Hueco Tanks. There will be connectivity to North Loop. And there'll be connectivity through the different residential streets laid out in the subdivision plat. Just another note, just in terms of the variance request, next slide. In terms of, again, planning practices, right, you want to have different types of densities, right? For right now, 90% of the lots that are in Socorro are about 10,000 square feet. And it's okay, right? But if 90% of your lots are 10,000 square feet, that means you're getting 4 lots per acre, which is not very sustainable, quite frankly, right? All that's going to do is you're going to eat up your farmland faster. So a little bit of density is okay. The Socorro master plan encourages smaller lot, and this is taken straight from the Socorro master plan, and it says encourages smaller lot sizes for single-family dwellings by ensuring sufficient land is zoned for these uses and providing financial incentives and density bonuses. And then finally, the last point just again looks at the density. So when you look at what the developer is asking, currently R2 allows apartments at 15 units per acre. If you subtract the ponds and you subtract the streets, you're left with 30 acres. So the applicant, if they wanted to, could accommodate 470 apartments. They're accommodating 219 homes, and that's about 7 units to the acre. Again, not outrageous, right? It's not even anywhere close to sort of the standard for density when it comes to subdivision plats and neighborhoods, whether it's El Paso or Socorro. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, the developers here on the lift station, Mr. Cruz, what do you want to talk about?
One moment, Ms. Villalobos.
That's okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Jorge Escarte with CA Group for the record. Yes, sir, Mr. Cruz.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand the lift station a little bit more. If you can provide some background on that.
Sure. We've met with the Lower Valley for probably the last several months, and we're looking at building a regional lift station that would not just serve our property, but also some of the adjacent properties. So we've kind of located it in a way where the Lower Valley felt that it would be strategically advantageous for the area. I'm sure that answers your question.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Ms. Villalobos?
Just, real quick, I'm all for development, I really love that as a realtor. However, I don't like the smaller lots. Has anybody been up to the new neighborhoods where the smaller lots and the houses are all close to each other? There's cars everywhere. It is completely, if you go, I don't know, 6, 7 in the afternoon, there's cars everywhere. There's danger that kids could run and you can't see them because there's cars everywhere. They're too close to each other. Socorro, when we decided, I think it was a couple of years ago, to change the ordinance of, the smallest lot, 6,000, is because we do want to keep our homes here with good lots. Kind of mimicking our old neighborhood that is 1 acre, 2 acre homes, kind of something like that, not smaller than that. So we don't have the, right now it's, 2.5 or two cars per household, 2.5. Imagine small. I know the developer is trying to get more houses in there. They did say they, to help their bottom line. That's okay. That's the American way, but not at the expense of the cost for the city in the future. And I know that they are dedicating some land, but is that worth us making these lots smaller? I was just seeing today in the system that some of these, builders are now offering, homes with 4,000 square foot lots. That's tiny, but a lot of houses and a lot of cars. I would want my fellow councilman to think about.
I'm sorry, Ms. Villalobos.
I'm sorry?
We were just, Ms. Villalobos?
And I know that.
Ms. Villalobos?
Ms. Villalobos, we've been disconnected from teleconference.
Hello?
We have been disconnected from teleconference. Let us connect again before we can continue the meeting.
Okay.
Welcome and thank you for choosing. If you are the host, please announce yourself. Welcome and thank you. If you are the host, please enter your PIN followed by the pound. Thank you. There are 3 participants in the conference.
Yes, ma'am, so the way that the development is laid out, there are, so a couple of things. One, not every lot will be smaller than 6,000 square feet. That's number one. Number two, the range is between 5,500 and 6,000. So there's some that are 5,900, 5,800, 5,700. There's no lot smaller than 5,500, ma'am.
I know that's not a lot, but then that's gonna become the future, so please keep that in mind. Thank you.
How many I have a question. How many of these, what's the percentage of these lots that are smaller than, in this range?
So Mayor, you give me 1 minute. I have that information, but I have to look it up.
Yes.
Mr. Reyes?
Comment. I know we have, or some of us have seen this before. It's more than 50%.
I'm just saying because we can't see the numbers here, and it should say where it says total lots, but the writing is very, very small, so we can't see that.
Okay, so I have that information if you want to get in. So the approximately 70% of the total lots will require the variance. And if you'd like, so again, it ranges between 5,500 and 6,000. You also have some lots that are at you have 18 lots that are bigger than 7,000 square feet. You have some lots that are between 6,900 and 7,000. So it's just a range of different lots, right? But again, in its totality of the 219, 70% would be between 5,500 and 6,000. Yeah, so it just depends.
So, I'm sorry, you said that from 5,500 and above would be 70%, or?
Yes, ma'am. So yeah, just to clarify, the variance would allow, so let's step back for a minute, right? The R2, if you want to do an R2, the very minimum size has to be 6,000. You can go above that. You can't go below that. So if you want to go below that, you need the variance. And so the variance would allow for lots to be between 5,500 and 5,999, right? 6,000. And so out of the 219, 70% would require the variance. 70% of the lots would be within that range.
Would be more than 6,000 square feet?
Would be less than 6,000 square feet.
Less than?
Less than, yes ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, it's not 5,500. Again, you have some that are 5,700 and between 5,700 and 5,800. It's just it's a different range, and again, I can't speak for the developer, right? But the lot's configuration is also the way that the lot is sort of the land is laid out, right? It's not a perfect square, but that's what we would base it on.
Mayor,
Ms. Villalobos?
just real quick again, guys. We allow this one, we're gonna have to allow the rest of the builders to do the same thing. Please keep that in mind. I don't know if you guys live in neighborhoods that are, you know, your house and you only have very little parking for gas or whatever, but this is what it's looking like. I think we decided to do what we did because we wanted to be a little bit different. Just keep that in mind.
I have a question.
Mr. Cruz?
Mr. Reina?
Yes, sir.
So is CA the developer? You said they were the developer. Are they the developer or the civil engineer team?
Mr. Cruz, I'm sorry, what's the question, sir?
CEA?
CA is the engineering thing.
Okay, they're not the developer.
They're not the developer.
Who's the developer?
Mr. Escobar.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So I think it's a case by case, dependent on the flow of traffic, the area and stuff like that. If we can build smaller homes in a certain area, we'll do it. If we gotta go larger, we'll go larger in certain areas. 2.5 cars, I don't know anyone that owns 2.5 cars, but, well, what I'm getting at is, I feel that the development in this area will support the flow of traffic. I mean, especially for this area here, and we'll take it as a case by case as it comes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, hold on, I'm gonna finish here.
Okay.
So in the summary of request, it shows here 230 total lots, but the applicant's requesting 217 or?
219, so,
219.
yeah, there is a typo on my part, but, so the
Okay,
lots
because-
as laid out in the subdivision is 219 lots.
I just wanna make sure that what we're voting on is, because what we see here on paper, on the backup documentation, doesn't necessarily mean that that's what we're voting on, and I wanna make that clear for council. I wanna make sure that we are accurate when we're voting. So it's not 230 lots.
No, it's 219, and then just to, Mr. Cruz, so when it comes to subdivision plats, I know it's really small, right? Maybe in future items we'll print out the legal map for you.
Right, I understand.
But when it comes to subdivision plats, what you are voting on is what they're presenting. They cannot deviate from it, right? So that's why you have the preliminary, final plat. If there's any sort of major changes, you'll see them in the final plat. So you are voting on what is presented, and it is 219 lots.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Alright.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor,
Ms. Villalobos?
I'm sorry, did you say, am I okay to speak?
Yes, go ahead.
It's cutting off, I'm sorry. So, Mr. Cruz and Councilman, and Ms. Mayor, just real quick, there was a study done a couple of years ago. And the study stated that there was, approximately 2.5 cars per household. That's, and I'm sorry, Mr. Rudy, you weren't there at that meeting, so, that doesn't make sense, right, 2.5, but that's what it means. Approximately 2.5 vehicles per household. It could be 3 cars, it could be more, that's what they came up with that study, okay? And then, for us to think that the developer is gonna take care of the traffic flow, big mistake, that's not true. Once they develop, they're gone, okay? And the city's left, we're picking up the pieces. The other thing I wanted to mention is, we did away with R3s for a reason. Okay, so there's no more R3s, so we can't build smaller homes, but the lot is a different situation here. They're asking for a variance, and in return, I believe, Mr. Daniel, they're giving the city some right of way, right, because of that variance. So, I mean, if we give them that a variance, correct?
So, Ms. Cruz, I think that is implied, ma'am. I don't know that it's an explicit consideration, but again, when the plat comes in, it shows the lots, it shows the dimension, it shows the dedication of the right of way. I think that's a question for the developer from, again, I don't know that I can answer that fully, ma'am.
Well, excuse me, the reason I say dedicated is because that's what you said.
Yeah, that's right.
That
So
square is dedicated to the city.
yes, correct. So in that regard, Ms. Colombialos, you are correct, ma'am. So the plat, and again, to the point I made earlier, the plat as it's been laid out, as it is presented to you tonight, does dedicate certain amount of land to the City of Socorro for the extension of Nuevo Oil tanks. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we are, in return, we have to give something in order to, again, I would, really, I know that it's only 500 square feet in some cases, and some other, but who's to say that another developer won't come and say, well, here you allowed it, why aren't you allowing it here? It's not a case by case. People will come and tell you, well, you allowed it
case-by-case basis is that not everyone's gonna dedicate land for future development, for a future roadway, right? So that's where it case-by-case is that we do have in the NPO a project, we are gonna need right away. Here's development, and this is, the opportunity. So I think that's what he was referencing when it's case-by-case. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that.
I have a question. Mr. Gallina,
Yes, sir.
should the request for a variance come through, planning and zoning and they deny it, will it hit our desk?
If the request for the variance, yes, because the planning and zoning is just a recommendation.
It's a recommendation,
Yes, sir.
but it's ultimately up to the council to say yes or no, correct?
Yeah, at the end of the day, this body has the final approval. Yes.
And we need a motion, please?
Motion to approve?
Second.
With the variance? Motion to approve with variance?
Ruben Reyes,
Yes.
Cesar Nevares,
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia,
Aye.
Rudy Cruz,
Yes.
and Iván Colom Villalobos.
Moving on to city manager, item number 18, discussion and action to approve Mueller Inc. for the purchase of mechanic shop hut in the amount of $49,995.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm gonna give you, so the city identified major areas of need affecting city departments and presented their findings at the City Council numerous 2021 capital improvement project workshop. The City Council had agreed to allocate $100,000 of CIP monies to install and create a new mechanic shop, which would be housed in the Public Works Yard at 241 Old Waco Tensport. The new shop would be capable of housing multiple vehicles at one time and can accommodate the large size equipment recently acquired by the Police, Recreation, and Public Works. The city, in compliance with its purchasing policy, received 3 quotes for comparison and found that Mueller Inc. proved to be the best choice due to capability, ability to custom build a garage to suit our needs or use an existing mass product model. Cost is $49,995. Quality of materials, hot-dipped aluminum zinc alloy, coated gabalu. Building price will not as a result of corrosion, rupture, fail structural, or perforating. Years of warranty for a period of 20 years from the date of purchase. Our next steps would be once the purchase has been awarded, the city will then come back to request council to review and award the purchase as required by purchasing policy for installation and foundation, equipment, and supplies for this mechanic shop, which all has been allocated through our capital improvement program. The next slides are our current situation. And we're just gonna go through some slides to show you what we have now. The proposed location. And this is what we're looking at. This is what the shop would look like. It would be have 3 bay areas. The next you show what the specs are. The next couple slides will show the specs. I don't know if you all have any questions. This completes our presentation. We do have our mechanic here in case you have any questions for me.
Mr. Reyes?
So it's just gonna be the building itself, just the building, and then later on, it's gonna come forward.
No, so the building comes with its restroom and office. What we'll do is we'll hire separately or do it in-house the foundation, right? And that will come back later in order for us to be able to follow the procurement process.
I have a question.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Duarte, is the building gonna be ordered with or without insulation? Because these building structures come with or without.
That would be a question for,
Yeah, it's without insulation.
yes, it does have
Okay, Very well.
And we need a motion, please?
Motion to approve.
Second.
And we have a speaker for this item, Sergeant Munoz.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, Sergeant Munoz, Socorro PD. I think that we would all have to agree here that we are in a big growth spurt. We're talking about development, we're talking about support, we're talking about pensions, we're talking about raises. But I would just want to let you all know that part of my daily duties is to handle 65 pieces of mobile equipment just from the police department itself. We're talking patrol cars, talking trucks, rescue equipment, support and operations equipment. And currently right now, part of my duties for the first part of my day is dealing with Juan, who does a great job with what he has right now. But we are growing and we're falling behind a little bit on the logistical side when it comes just to the rolling of vehicles. This is just PD. We have public works. We have other vehicles that need this type of support for everything. So I would encourage you to approve this for the growth of the city. Ultimately, it's for our citizens. Thank you.
Ruben Reyes,
Yes.
Cesar Nevares,
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia,
Aye.
Rudy Cruz,
Yes.
and Iván Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Item number 19, discussion and action to proceed with phase 2 of sidewalks.
Mayor, if I may.
Mr. Nevares?
If you allow me, I'm going to take my mask off. I wanted to disclose that, noticing all this, this is District 1 we're talking about as far as sidewalks. And a large portion of this is located in the area where I live. I live off of Jim B. Now, I want to disclose that I had nothing to do with the assignment of these sidewalks in this area. And by looking at it, 90% of these that have been assigned are all District 1. I'm an advocate for all 4 districts, not just mine, which is District 1. And I would suggest if we reconsider this and split these for even ways here for all 4 districts, and not just District 1. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Garcia.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say I'm thankful that Moon Road's finally getting sidewalks. That's something we tried for a long time ago, the first time I was here. This is great. I just wanted to put on record that I want, in the future, when we go this again, Moon Edition, which would include Innsbruck, Guian, Aldrin, Morocco Circle. That's the Moon Edition. Baggage Estates, which would include Oslo, Stedman, and Delhi. Also, Merida, which would include Floria, and Old Waco Tanks Road for the future of the sidewalks. I'm very excited about this. I had constituents ask about this, and this is very, very great for the future of Socorro. And it's just a minimal that we can do for our residents, but it means so much, especially on the safe routes to school to Waco Elementary. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Cruz?
I have to agree with Councilman Nevares, and I appreciate the consideration for equal development in all 4 districts. I think that we are not deviating from the plan. If anything, the streets that we want to develop on are still in the plan. We're just going to divide them equally amongst every district, and I think that that's the best way to do it. There's not going to be any, fighting amongst our residents or that. We'll get to it when we get to it, as our budget allows to. So I appreciate you providing that information and bringing that idea up. Thank you.
We need a motion, please.
Motion to approve?
Second.
and Council, I wanted to provide a quick overview. I know we do have, new elected officials that probably weren't here when we selected phase one. So I just wanted to go and have a quick overview so you all can be in, be aware of our master sidewalk plan. Would that be? Okay. And I'll go very quickly. So the city adopted a master sidewalk plan. The purpose was to inventory existing pedestrian infrastructure, identify design deficiencies, evaluate future sidewalk requirements, the development and implementation plan for facilities. Our goal is to improve pedestrian safety, promote walking as a viable mode of transportation. Plan is divided in 12 sections. Estimated cost is about $31 million to be able to put sidewalks throughout the whole city. Phase one included Flor del Sol, Cebu, Rio Vista, Middle Drain, North Moon Road, Richardson, Jewel, Patty Joe, Reveles, and Isabel. Phase two objective is to extend phase one, connect to extend sidewalks, and fill in existing gaps. Proposed streets for phase two is North Moon Road, Russ Road, McAdoo, Jervis, Jim Beam, Arlene Circle, Cheryl Circle. This is approximately about 2 miles. I would recommend staff goes back and reevaluates the proposed streets to make sure all 4 districts are included. I'm also asking we go out to bid for design and construction for this phase 2. If that's what council wishes, we will need to make that part of the motion.
So moved.
So I motion for equal development for phase 2 in all 4 districts.
Second.
And then we can go out to bid for construction and design.
Yes.
To include the bidding process.
Mayor, we have a speaker for this item, Miriam Cruz. Ms. Cruz?
I was just I was unmuted just for you on one moment. I want to mention that I signed up to speak on item number 17, and I was not given the opportunity to speak, and so I'm going to ask my representative, Mr. Neves, or Mr. at large, or really anyone, to open back up item number 17 and give me the opportunity to speak for a minute and a half. In regards to this item, I had a question in regards to why, on the section of Moon, the sidewalk was planning on being built from the right-hand side of the street instead of on the left-hand side of the street. I think I'm very familiar with Moon, and then students, kids that are usually walking are actually usually walking on the right-hand side, meaning the opposite side of where the elementary school is, which is along where there's already a sidewalk. If you look at the map and the graph, there's an area that there's already an existing sidewalk on that side of the road, and so I'm just wondering why we wouldn't continue on the same side, especially things like that side that most students do, since I guess the one neighborhood is larger than the other, and so it just seems that we're going to start creating safety issues for students trying to cross Moon in places that they shouldn't be crossing. Thank you.
Ruben Reyes.
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz.
Yes.
And Iván Colom Villalobos.
Ms. Rodarte, I'd like for you to see if you could, validate, whenever you can or when you come back and report, which streets and what the prices will be. To what Mrs. Cruz just said, it would propose a danger, and that's my concern, the danger. If you could, please, thank you. Yes.
Going back to item number 17.
I'd like to make a motion to retract to item number 17 and allow Ms. Cruz a minute and a half
Ruben Reyes.
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz.
Yes.
And Iván Colombia López.
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Am I on?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. So I wanted to mention that there was actually some information that was not provided to you on. I'm not really sure why. I'm sure it was just a mistake. But when the Planning and Zoning Commission approved the variance, as you can see in your backup, it did from 3 to 2. But what's not mentioned there is that we actually approved and we were given a table of how many homes were going to be given each square footage. And so I know that some of you guys can't hear me? Can you not hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I saw someone making signs, so I wasn't sure. So I'm just curious as to maybe why that information was not provided to you all, and also why it wasn't also included that we actually approved it, with the table that was provided in the backup that shows so many homes with this square footage, so many homes with this square footage. And so our recommendation for approval was actually made based on that table. And so that therefore, as you guys approved it, you approved it with the variance across the board. And so if they could make all of the homes with that variance, just so you know. So I'm hoping that you guys reconsider that and again, think about these issues a little bit more thoroughly and really look at the language that you're using to approve these, because I think it's important that we be specific. And that I'm not really sure why that backup was not
Ms. Cruz,
given.
your time is up.
Or that was given. Thank you.
First, do we have to retake the vote?
If I may.
For the other?
Mayor, just again to clarify, based on what Ms. Cruz said, it's not entirely correct. So again, the table was not presented to you, but we did talk about the percentages, and that was based on the table that I did present. But most importantly, and I know you can't read the